Hey, string players! Today we're going to be taking a look at page 18 in your lesson book. So if you want to go ahead and open to page 18, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to be learning today. So you might remember last year, maybe even the year before, we were using the blue packet practicing shifting. And that packet actually was the first half of this lesson book. So now we're in this section called the major keys section, where we're going to be exploring several different key signatures and how to play within those. And we're starting off, as you can see, in the key of C major with no sharps and no flats. Everything is natural. The nice thing about this book is that each time we start a new key, the first page is always the same set of exercises. So we go through the same process for each key. And then the second page, what we'll look at next lesson, is applying what you've learned on the first page and doing different tunes, and that part is different. So we're going to start right with number 104, finger patterns in the key of C major, and it says first position. Now, right off the bat, if you're a bass or a cello, you're probably thinking that there's something wrong here because you're shifting all the time right from the beginning. This is an example, and we've seen things like this in the past where something applies to the violins and violas, and then cello and bass kind of just get put in there. So for the violins and violas right now, everything is in first position, but cello and bass, you do have to shift right off the bat. So just be aware of that. And there's one other thing that applies to violin and viola that does not apply to cello and bass. So if you play cello and bass and you want to skip ahead a minute or like 90 seconds, go ahead and do that. Violins and violas, at the top of your page, you'll see a that's not blue, you'll see a yellow box that shows different finger patterns. And this is going to be very important as we go through this section of the book. So they show you the open hand pattern, where there's a whole step between every finger, the 1-2 pattern, where your first and second finger are close, 2-3 pattern, 2 and 3 are close, and the 3-4 pattern, where your third and fourth finger are close. And it's going to tell you which finger pattern you're on for each string. This is going to be really important because when we start applying this idea to pieces, you'll be able to go back and look and say, oh, okay, when I'm on the A string in first position, I know that that's the 1-2 pattern. Okay, so it's really important to pay attention to that. Cello and bass don't have to worry about that, actually. Once they're in a position, they use the fingering for that position. So that's something that's a little bit different depending on your instrument. But hopefully we're all regrouped now. We're looking at 104. And if you're a viola or a cello, you have probably 3 measures of rest at the beginning. That's because this goes through by string, and it starts with the E string. So violas and cellos don't have an E string. So this first little bit is just for the violins and bass. Violins and bass. So if you're a violin, you're going to see that this is an open pattern, which means all whole steps between all of your fingers. And this one's actually right off the bat the hardest one because remember, in the key of C, everything is natural, and an F natural on the E string is a low 1. So right off the bat, we're starting with a low first finger, and it's actually the same thing for bass on the E string. You're going to take your first finger and go back to half position. And then everything for violin is whole steps, and bass, you have a little shift in there. So I'm going to play what it should sound like on violin. And again, bass should sound the same, but much lower. So here's the open pattern. Here we go. Okay, now we're moving to the next one, the A string. So everyone plays for this. And if you're a violin or viola, you see it's a 1-2 pattern, that the close first and second finger to make a C natural on the A string. Cellos and bass, again, just follow what they've written down for your positions, for your shifting, and you'll get the right notes that way too, making sure we play a C natural. So here's the A string pattern. Going over to the D string, this should feel pretty familiar. It's still a 1-2 pattern for violins and violas. The same idea, we're looking for an F natural here. So here we go. Okay, again, the next one everyone can play. It's on our G. Violins and violas, check out that now you have a 2-3 pattern, so close 2 and 3. Okay, and it looks like bass has to shift, but cellos you don't have to shift at all, so that's a nice thing. You really do get to do this in first position. Same with the D string. All right, here we go, the G. And we're going to finish up with the C string. So again, violins and bass, now it's your turn to rest because you don't have these strings. Since I'm playing on a violin, I'll play the correct notes, but obviously I'm not playing on a C string. So here we go, violas and cellos. Okay, so hopefully you got the idea. You're going through each string, checking out how your fingering is in the key of C major, right? So if I were to give you a piece of music in the key of C major, and let's say you had to play on the D string, you would know those are F naturals and play with the same fingering that we just did in that exercise. So now if we move on to number 105, now this says finger patterns in C major, third position. So in this one, everyone starts in third position, and violins and violas, you stay there. But again, cellos and bass, sometimes you have to shift even higher. Most of the time you have to shift even higher. And I know that we've practiced that in past lessons and you're used to having to do that. So we're going to start with the E string again. So I'm going to go up to third position here. Remember, my note in third position on the E string is an A with my first finger. If you need to, you can find it first in first position and then shift up. Important that we start in the right spot. It's a 2-3 pattern violins. So here we go. Okay, we'll move over to the A string. So remember, as you move over through each string, you're still in third position, still staying in that same spot. Moving to the A string, still a 2-3 pattern for our violins and violas. Okay, cellos and bass, again, you have a little shift in there. We're listening for an F natural. Here we go. All right, I have to flip my page, but you don't. Moving on to the D string notes. Okay, our first finger is on G. Here we go. Awesome, and now the G notes, okay? And if you're a violin or a viola, this is the 3-4 pattern. This one's a little bit, just feels a little strange sometimes because we have to stretch our third finger. Let me go that way so you can see. We're not quite as used to doing that, and then our pinky goes right next to our third finger. So here's G. Ready? Here we go. Good. And finally, the C string. Okay, so again, I'm playing different notes. Here we go. Oh, I did that wrong. I'm sorry. Let me do that again. Let's try that one more time. There we go. I went down to an E that time instead of an F. All right, so, and again, that one was an open pattern for viola, so you had a chance to do that open pattern again. So we've just gone through every string, what the spacing will be for our fingers or the position if you're a cello or bass. And now we should be able to apply that to number 106, our C major scale, our C major scale. So for example, as I'm looking at the beginning of the C major scale, if I'm a violin, I start with 3 on G, and then right away I go to the D string. And as I'm playing on the D string, let's say I get to my second finger and I don't know whether to make it a low 2 or a high 2. You can just look right back at number 104. That's when you're in first position where you should look. And you'll see that on the D string, it's the 1-2 pattern. So you can kind of help yourself out. That's kind of like your cheat sheet. You can look over and check out the finger patterns, fingerings for each string. Same thing with cello and bass as well. And viola. I think I left out viola. So here's number 106, a 2-octave C major scale For violas and cellos, this is going to be pretty uneventful because you don't have to shift at all. You can start on your open C. Bass, there's a little bit of shifting, not a lot. And violins, we do have to go up to third position. Okay. Now this is written with eighth notes and quarter notes and half notes. I just want to go through this where every note is a half note. That way we can have a chance to really listen and make sure that we're playing the pitches correctly and not just rushing through and trying to play the rhythm. Eventually we'll add the rhythm, but for right now, we're going to do it with half notes. Okay, so here we go, 2 octave C major scale. If you're a violin, here's the shift. Okay, if something doesn't sound quite right in that, it probably means that your spacing is off with your fingers. And if you can't figure it out on your own, I will help you out in your lesson in person next week. Okay, and again, I'm turning, but you don't have to. The last thing we're doing on this page, 107, is the C major arpeggio. So you may or may not have heard this word before, so I'll kind of explain it real quick so that you know what this means. So every key signature has its own scale, right? Just like how we just played the C major scale. You can play, and a scale is just a pattern of notes. An arpeggio is the same thing. It's a different type of pattern of notes, but you can play one for any key that you're in. So right now we're in C major. And the pattern for an arpeggio is that you only play notes 1, 3, 5, and 8 in the scale. So 1, 3, 5, and 8, only 4 different notes happening. And so in your scale, if you look back at number 106, note number 1 is obviously C, right? Note number 3 is E, note number 5 is G, and then note number 8 is C. Okay, so we're playing C, E, G, and the high C. And in this case, it's 2 octaves, so we keep going up. So it's kind of like playing the scale, but skipping all of those notes in between. And so that's a pattern that the more we do this, you'll come to recognize that pattern. Just like how now you can hear something and say, oh, that's a major scale, you'll be able to say, oh, that's a major arpeggio. So we'll be doing that throughout this year. So it's important you understand that. Violins, there is a shift in here for you. And they actually ask you to go to second position. That's okay with me if you'd like to do that. But for me, I actually prefer to shift just on that high C in measure 3. And that would be, I would go to third position and play it with my third finger. So it's your choice. If you want to do second position starting on the G, you can. I actually prefer to shift on the C to third position. And bass, you have a little shift. No one else does any shifting. So again, should be pretty straightforward. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. So again, your homework is all of page 18, making sure you're really comfortable with those things. We'll play through them together in your lesson, and then we'll probably start looking a little bit at page 19, which will be the focus of our next lesson. So you'll get a little preview of what that's going to be like. So again, just be practicing those things. We'll go over them together. If you have any questions before that, just let me know and we'll work those out.